Hello, everyone, and welcome to Popcorn Banter Minis. I'm Drew, and I'm here with Keegan, who you can almost definitely see on your screen right now. It's always good to have you around, Keegs.
Good to be here.
So, Popcorn Banter Minis is a brand new format that we're rolling out, and it's actually our first foray into the big wide world of video content. So, this is very exciting. What this show will be is a very, very quick recap of shows that are currently airing or any exciting breaking news from the entertainment or gaming world. So today we're going to start off with a recap of the first episode of The Mandalorian Season 2. So here's your official spoiler warning. Spoilers.
You can stop here and then go watch the episode, but definitely spoilers.
We will be spoiling stuff. So I can't say spoilers anymore.
That's almost the point of the popcorn minis. So if you haven't seen what we're talking about, I'd say avoid it until you have.
Absolutely. So if you're yet to watch the episode, highly recommend bowing out here. And here we go.
But definitely come back.
Yeah, for sure. Watch it, come back. So Keegs, I'm sure people don't really want to hear me talking the whole time. So let's get into what we're here to talk about. So today we're going to be working out the good, the bad, and the interesting from the first episode of The Mandalorian Season 2. All right. Yep. So Keegs, why don't you kick us off? Tell us what the positive was for you or the good was out of the first episode.
Well, my favorite thing about the first episode, I noticed it most in this first episode, but it's definitely been a bit of a theme of The Mandalorian. It's just the world creation in Star Wars away from kind of the Jedis, because every movie that we've seen, it's all about the Jedis. And yeah, it's definitely not the first thing to do the world creation outside of the Jedis, but I think it's the best that we've seen.
Yeah. And I think people were definitely getting sick of the Jedi thing, the big sort of Skywalker saga from the movie. So it's been such a refreshing twist to see the Mandalorian come in.
Yeah, the different planets, and they're kind of, I suppose, the equivalent in our world is different cities. But yeah, it's a really good, really well fleshed out way to do it without lightsabers. And I don't really miss them, to be honest.
It's a lot more grounded too, isn't it?
100%. That's probably the one word answer. Yes.
Well, my positive out of the first episode was just how action packed the show is. And I think that's at its core, that's what I love so much about the show. It does have a story there, and we are following along with the story, but for the most part, the story doesn't actually matter, because each episode they do tell a very compelling, almost like a side story, really, that's just full of really cool action sequences. And that was on display in the very first scene of this episode, where, you know, I said in my my article review of The Mandalorian that the guy was the love child of Leela from Futurama and Mike Wazowski. And that guy has like guns to his head. There's like 6 guys around. And he's just like, yeah, look, you're not the first. And he just takes them all out. Like, I love that kind of stuff. And I think it's just really like quite a fun show in that regard.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's move on to your negatives. So what didn't you like about the episode?
The thing I didn't like is probably how the first episode went straight into like your story of the week storytelling. And I know I read your article on the website and you did touch on this, but the first episode of a season is kind of meant to pick up the threads that were left at the end of the last season and sort of get you excited for the season. I know The Boys season 2, the first episode did that and gets you right in, but kind of went straight into like a story of the week narrative, like beginning, middle, and end, with that little bit at the beginning, just to give you a bit of plot thread throughout the season.
Yeah. I knew that you were going to say that as your negative. And to be honest, I was thinking like I'd come up with something myself, but I think it's too important to ignore. I know I just said that the Mandalorian doesn't need the story to be good, and that's true, but they still have the story. And it was weird that they, like you said, that the very first episode wasn't story driven. It's almost like they completely ignored the story. Like, the child, or, baby Yoda, as it's known on the internet, really didn't feature at all in the whole episode.
I feel like they like to pepper in little cute parts of Baby Yoda. Like there was one scene where he like hit the lid and it closed on him and then he skid away. But I don't want them to lean on Baby Yoda too much, because that was my problem with Guardians of the Galaxy 2, to be honest. Baby Groot, they just leant on him too hard.
Oh, he's just a merchandise making machine, Baby Yoda. So they'll make him look as cute as possible. So every single kid in the world starts annoying their parents to buy the toys.
I feel like when they do it sparingly, though, that's effective. When they make a whole episode where it's just a bunch of Baby Yoda doing a lot of noises and stuff like that, it's too pandering.
It's starting to get to the point where I'm beginning to wonder whether he's going to be a baby for the whole series, because he's now been a baby because isn't he supposed to be like 50 years old or something?
Yeah, I don't know. Yoda was pretty old, and I guess he looked old, but he kind of looked like a baby too. So,
well, he's just really small.
yeah. So he's not going to grow, but I suppose he'll hit puberty at some point. I don't know.
Wouldn't
I
that
don't
be
want to lean on that too hard.
story arc? Yeah, jerk Baby Yoda. All right. So we're both in agreement that the main negative from the episode was the lack of story building coming out of season 1 into season 2. All right. So let's talk about the interesting. So this doesn't land in the positives. It doesn't land in the negatives. It's just something that you're kind of excited about moving forward. And what was that for you?
I think it's a pretty obvious one. It's which they didn't confirm, but they heavily implied that Boba Fett was still alive. And I mean, I'll keep an open mind about it, but it's a story that I was actually telling you a little bit earlier. My dad doesn't watch The Mandalorian, but I told him that I watched the new episode and that they heavily implied that Boba Fett was still alive. And the look on his face was just like he took his childhood away from him.
Disbelief, yeah. And he would have been what, about 10 when that movie first came out?
I remember him telling me that it's one of his first memories is going to see what was a Star Wars at the time, but we now know as A New Hope.
Yeah.
And so he grew up with the original series. So I don't think they're really giving that generation, their first generation of Star Wars fans, much justice by really bringing him back.
Yeah, well, I know that you and I like to kind of be sort of surprised about shows, so we don't lean too much into rumors and speculation and stuff. So I actually haven't Googled whether it is legitimately supposed to be Boba Fett, but I mean, all signs point to yes, right?
But I mean, I'll keep an open mind about it. But the thing about Boba Fett that kind of made his character so intriguing in the first place was that he was such a small part, but he was a huge pop culture thing.
Yeah.
I remember watching the movies a little bit later in my life. I think I was like 13 or 14. So I sort of knew the pop culture references to do with Star Wars. And then when I watched it for the first time, I'm like, that's all he does. But that's kind of why he was important.
And these sort of things take away from those scenes in those movies too, right? Like if Boba Fett turns out to be alive and he has been alive this whole time, then that whole scene with Luke in Tatooine where he's doing that epic save of all his friends, it loses something, doesn't it?
Yeah, like we were talking about in our podcast, I think it was mentioned, it kind of retrospectively changes the whole story, which I don't know, the originals, you just don't want to touch that, and it's very scary territory. But again, I'm ready to have my mind change. If it's the best thing that ever happens, happy days.
There's still a little part of me that's hoping one day Disney's going to come out and say, you know what, we made a mistake. Everything we did after episode 7, just forget it ever happened.
Maybe they can have the Flashpoint paradox change that as well.
Yeah, well,
epic movie crossover.
So I suppose my interesting thing would be I'm just really looking forward to seeing what happens with Moff Gideon in this season. Like he came across as like a really big bad guy in season 1. We didn't see him in the first episode, but I'm sure it's not far off. I mean, he appeared in the recap at the start of episode 1, season 2. So yeah, it can't be far off before we see him. That steel lightsaber of his looks particularly terrifying. So
very cool.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. I actually just want to go back a couple of steps. One thing I did want to say as a negative was I felt a big change in the Mandalorian's character in this episode. He seemed a lot more character growthy. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't quite as fierce and hard
Yeah, I feel like if you went back and watched the first season, he shows moments of that, and they kind of they're leaning on that. The fact that he was really angry about the Marshal with
Yeah.
the Mandalorian suit, and then he just kind of pushes that aside for the greater good of them killing the
Yeah.
Crate Dragon. Yeah, I feel like he should care about that more, but I don't know.
I was really happy that he didn't give the armor back at the end of the episode, because I thought that would have been a bit cheap. Like I thought it was going to happen. You know, I said to my girlfriend at the time while we were watching it, I was like, I bet you he gives the armor back at the end of the episode. And then he didn't. And I was like, awesome, because Mandalorians wouldn't do that. And it reminds me of
those parts. Yeah.
It reminds me in the first Deadpool movie, you know, at the end where he's got the guy on the ground, he's got the gun to his head, and Colossus is saying to him, like, oh, you know, you've got to be a hero. And heroes have a couple of moments, and then he just shoots the guy. It's like good, because that's not who his character is.
Yeah. So. Well, we as viewers, we like to be surprised. So when you're surprised by something, it's good.
Well, that takes care of our positives, negatives, and our interestings. So obviously this is just going to be a really short show. You know, we might do it after each Mandalorian episode, and then when new things come out on Netflix or Stan or Disney Plus or Amazon or whatever,
releases, that kind of stuff.
Game releases, we might jump on and do it. But just to finish off, really, really quickly, give me a score out of 10 for the first episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian.
Wow. Well, it certainly wasn't perfect. Average. I'd have to say average. I wasn't blown away. I wasn't given heaps to watch the next episode about, so I'm going to have to say, I'll say 6, but I did enjoy it. It is better than Midway.
I'll go a bit more than that. I'll say 7, and my reasoning was I enjoyed it, but as you said, it was far from perfect, and there was a few things that kind of irked me a little bit, but yeah, it was a fun episode, and it was enough to make me want to go, I'm still keen to watch this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's pretty much it. Short, sharp, to the point. I like it.
Yeah. If anyone agrees, disagrees, or has their own opinions for good, bad, and interesting, feel free to let us know in the comments.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. Also, we have our podcast, the Popcorn Banter podcast, which you can go and check out anytime on Spotify or Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, literally whatever you listen to podcasts on. And you can also go to our website, www.popcornbanter.com. There'll be a link in the description that you can click on. And
every week, I think you're doing the reviews of The Mandalorian.
I will be, yeah. So for season 2 of Mandalorian, I will be doing a written review each week. Yeah. So you can keep an eye out for that. And that's all we've got time for. Cool.
Lovely. It's fun. See you next time.
I'll talk to you later.
Take it easy.
Bye.